The space around them was cold and empty. Jake Morrison stood in the main room of his ship, looking at the screens that showed nothing but stars and darkness. His ship was called the Horizon's Edge, and it was big enough for 200 people. They were explorers, not fighters. Their job was to find new worlds and meet new kinds of aliens. Jake had been the captain of this ship for 3 years now. He was 42 years old, with gray hair starting to show at his temples. Before this job, he had been a soldier for Earth. He had fought in wars on distant planets and had seen what happened when bad people did terrible things to good people. The alarm started ringing. Casey Brooks ran to her station near the front of the room. She was young, maybe 28, with short brown hair and quick fingers that danced over her controls. Casey was their best person for talking to other ships and picking up signals from space. "Captain, we're getting a message," she said, her voice tight with worry. "It's not from any human ship. The signal is weak, but it's coming from really far away." Jake walked over to stand behind her chair. "Ep!" "Put it on the main screen." The big screen in front of them flickered, and then they saw something that made everyone in the room go quiet. It was an alien, unlike any they had seen before. The creature looked like it was made of blue crystal, with 6 thin arms and a body that seemed to glow with its own light. Its eyes were large and filled with tears. The aliens spoke in clicks and whistles, but their computer changed the sounds into words they could understand. The voice that came out sounded scared and desperate. "Please, anyone who can hear this message," the alien said. "My name is Zeth Cole. I speak for the people of Vila Prime. The Dominion is coming to our world. They will kill us all. We have no army, no big guns, no way to fight them. We are artists and scientists. We study the stars and make beautiful things, but now we are going to die." The alien's crystal body shook as it spoke. "The Dominion has already destroyed 12 other worlds in our part of space. They take the strong ones as slaves and kill the rest. Our children, our old ones, our teachers and healers, they will all be gone in 3 days. If anyone hears this, if anyone cares about right and wrong, please help us. We don't have much time." The message ended and the screen went dark. The room was so quiet that Jake could hear the soft hum of the ship's engines. Linda Hayes spoke up from her station. She was the ship's science officer, a woman in her 50s who knew more about space and aliens than almost anyone. "Captain, I'm reading the signal's origin point. Vela Prime is 17 light-years from here. If we pushed our engines as hard as they can go, we could get there in 60 hours. "What about the Dominion?" Jake asked. "What do we know about them?" Linda's face went pale. "They're bad news, sir. Really bad news. The Dominion of Krex has been taking over worlds for 2 years now. They have huge ships with weapons that can crack planets. They don't talk, they don't make deals, they just show up and start killing." Casey turned around in her chair. "Sir, I'm picking up more signals. Long-range sensors show a massive fleet moving toward the Vila system. The computer says there are over 400 ships." Jake felt his stomach drop. 400 ships. His single exploration vessel carried some basic weapons for protection against pirates, and nothing that could stand up to a real military force. If he took his ship to Vela Prime, he would probably be taking his crew to their deaths. But he looked around the room at his people. Jake remembered why he had left the military to become an explorer. It wasn't because he was tired of fighting. It was because he believed that humans should use their strength to protect others, not to take what they wanted. "Linda, what do you know about the Valons?" he asked. "They're peaceful, sir. They've never hurt anyone. Their whole society is built around learning and creating art. They don't even have a word for war in their language. They've been sending beautiful music and poetry to other worlds for 50 years, asking for nothing in return." Jake closed his eyes for a moment. He could see the fear in that alien's crystal face. He could hear the desperation in its voice. Somewhere out there, an entire world full of innocent people was about to die, and they had asked for help. "Sir," said Pete Collins over the ship's communication system. Pete was down in the engine room, a big man with rough hands who could fix anything that broke. "I heard that message. If you're thinking what I think you're thinking, my engines are ready." Jake opened the ship's general communication channel so everyone could hear him. "Attention all crew members. You heard the message from Vela Prime. A peaceful species is about to be wiped out by the Dominion. I know we're not a warship. I know we might not make it back home. But I took an oath when I became a captain, promised to defend the innocent, and to stand up for what's right. He paused, looking at the faces around him. These people had signed up to explore space and make contact with new civilizations. They hadn't expected to face a suicide mission against overwhelming odds. I'm setting course for Vela Prime, Jake continued. Anyone who wants to leave this ship can request transfer to the nearest space station. I won't think less of you. This isn't your fight. The silence lasted for 10 seconds. Then Casey spoke up. Sir, where you go, we go. That's what crews do. Engines are ready when you are, Captain, Pete called out from below. Medical base standing by, said Dr. Amy Wilson. She was their doctor, a kind woman who had spent years treating sick people on frontier worlds. One by one, every department on the ship checked in. Nobody asked to leave. Nobody complained about the danger. They were humans, and humans didn't walk away when innocent people needed help. Jake felt proud and scared at the same time. Proud because his crew was showing the best of what humanity could be, scared because he was about to lead them into a fight they couldn't win. Casey sent a message on all emergency channels. He ordered, "Tell any human ships in this sector what's happening at Vela Prime. Maybe we can find some help." "Already on it, sir?" Message sent. "Pete, give me everything the engines have. Linda, I want to know everything you can find out about Dominion ships and weapons. Everyone else, start thinking about how we turn an exploration ship into something that can fight." The Horizon's Edge changed course and jumped into hyperspace, racing toward a distant world where people they had never met were about to die. Jake knew the odds were against them. One ship against 400 was not a fight, it was suicide. But as he watched his crew work with determined faces, preparing for what might be their last mission, Jake Morrison felt something he hadn't felt in years. He felt like they were about to remind the galaxy what humans were really made of. Behind them, space seemed empty and quiet. But in the depths of hyperspace, their emergency message was spreading to every human ship within range. Somewhere, in the darkness, something was starting to stir. Something that the galaxy had never seen before. The monsters of Earth were waking up. Captain Ryan Webb was drinking coffee in his command chair when the message came through. His ship, the Thunderstrike, was a heavy cruiser with enough firepower to destroy a small moon. Ryan had been patrolling the outer edges of human space for 6 months, looking for pirates and making sure trade routes stayed safe. The message was short, encoded in military language that only other captains would understand. Came from Jake Morrison, a man Ryan had fought beside during the colony wars 5 years ago. Jake was a good man, the kind who would give his life for strangers if he thought it was right. Emergency, Velen homeworld under Dominion threat. Need all military ships immediately. Innocent people will die. Please respond. Ryan read the message 3 times. Then he called his second in command, Lieutenant Tom Baker, to his chair. Was a thin man with sharp eyes who had served on military ships for 15 years. "Tom, get me everything we have on the Dominion of Krex," Ryan said. "Then send a message to Admiral Kate Sullivan. Tell her we might have a situation." Tom came back 10 minutes later with a data pad full of information. His face was grim. "Sir, the Dominion is bad news. They've wiped out 12 worlds in the last 2 years. No survivors, no prisoners, just complete destruction. Their fleet has over 400 ships, including some of the biggest warships anyone has ever built." Ryan felt cold inside. "What about human forces in that sector?" "Not many, sir. Few. Patrol ships, some cargo vessels, maybe 1 or 2 military cruisers like us. If Morrison is heading there alone, he's flying into a death trap." Ryan had fought in 3 wars and had seen what happened when good people did nothing, while bad people hurt the innocent. He knew that Jake Morrison was probably going to die trying to save people he had never met. But he also knew that was exactly what humans were supposed to do. "Send a message to every human military ship within 50 light years," Ryan ordered. "Tell them what's happening. Tell them we need everyone who can fight." Tom looked worried. "Sir, we don't have authority to order other ships into combat." This could be seen as mutiny. Ryan smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. "Tom, sometimes you have to choose between following orders and doing what's right. I'd rather face a court-martial than explain to dead children why we didn't help them." Within 2 hours, Ryan started getting responses. Captain Lisa Grant was leading a squadron of destroyers on escort duty 3 sectors away. Her mission, and headed for Vela Prime with all 6 of her ships. Colonel Dan Price was training his Marines on a distant planet. He loaded his soldiers into their assault ships and joined the growing fleet, but the most surprising response came from Admiral Kate Sullivan herself. She was supposed to be at a diplomatic meeting with alien ambassadors, discussing trade agreements and peace treaties. Instead, she sent a message that made Ryan's heart race. "All human military forces, this is Admiral Sullivan. I am taking command of Operation Righteous Fury. Any ship that can fight is ordered to proceed immediately to Vela Prime. We will not allow genocide to happen while we watch." That is not who we are. Ryan felt proud to be human. In less than 6 hours, over 50 military ships had changed course toward Vela Prime. Destroyers, cruisers, frigates, and even some of the big battleships were racing to answer a call for help from people they had never met. But the military response was just the beginning. Nick Torres was hauling mining equipment to a new colony when he heard about Vela Prime. Nick had been a Marine for 10 years before he became a cargo ship captain. He knew what the Dominion did to innocent people. His ship, the Freedom's Call, wasn't built for fighting. But it carried a heavy construction equipment that could be turned into weapons. Nick called his crew together in the ship's main cargo bay. There were 23 of them, all former military, who had chosen peaceful jobs after their service ended. They were mechanics, engineers, and pilots who just wanted to make an honest living moving cargo between worlds. "Boys, we just got word that some peaceful aliens are about to be murdered by the Dominion," Nick said. "Our military is going to help, but they're outnumbered 4 to 1. They could use some extra ships, even cargo haulers like us." His crew looked at each other. These men had families, homes, and lives they wanted to get back to. Fighting the Dominion wasn't their job anymore. Bobby Chen, Nick's chief mechanic, spoke first. "Captain, my tools can turn those mining lasers into ship weapons. Won't be pretty, but it might help. I can rig the construction charges to work like torpedoes," added Sam Rodriguez, their explosives expert. "The Dominion won't expect cargo ships to shoot back." One by one, every crew member volunteered. They knew they might die, but they couldn't live with themselves if they didn't try to help. Nick wasn't the only civilian captain making this choice. Across human space, hundreds of non-military ships started changing course toward Vela Prime. Mining vessels, exploration ships, research stations, and even luxury yachts began heading for what everyone knew would be a massive battle. Dr. Amy Mitchell was studying a rare star formation when the news reached her hospital ship, Mercy's Light. Amy was one of the best doctors in human space, and her ship carried the most advanced medical equipment available. She was supposed to be doing research, not flying into war zones. But Amy had taken an oath to save lives, and she knew there would be wounded people who needed help after the battle. She ordered her ship to Vela Prime, bringing 30 doctors and nurses who could treat injuries that would come from fighting the most dangerous military force in the galaxy, the strangest ships to respond, the ones that didn't officially exist. Black unmarked vessels that appeared on no registry, crewed by people who were supposed to be dead. These were the shadow ships of human intelligence services, carrying weapons and soldiers that no government would admit to having. Commander Alex Stone had been declared killed in action 3 years ago during a classified mission. In reality, he now commanded a stealth ship that did things regular military forces couldn't do. When he heard about Vela Prime, he knew this was exactly the kind of fight his people were made for. Alex's ship, which had no name and no official designation, carried 47 men and women who had been recruited from prisons, mental hospitals, and military courts. They were murderers, terrorists, and war criminals who had been given a choice between execution and serving as humanity's monsters. They fought without rules, without mercy, and without the slightest concern for their own survival. "Listen up," Alex told his crew over the ship's communication system. "We've got innocent people about to be slaughtered by an enemy that thinks humans are soft. Time to show them what we really are." His crew smiled. These were people who had been cast out of civilized society for being too violent, too dangerous, and too willing to do terrible things. Now they had a chance to use their darkness for something good. By the time Jake Morrison's ship arrived at Vela Prime, found something that amazed him. Over 800 human ships had gathered around. The alien world? Military vessels, civilian cargo haulers, research ships, hospital ships, and unmarked black vessels that seemed to absorb light. Jake opened a communication channel to all the human ships. "This is Captain Morrison aboard the Horizon's Edge." "I can't believe you all came." Admiral Sullivan's voice came back strong and clear. "Captain, when humans hear that innocent people need help, we don't send just the military. We send everyone. The Dominion's about to learn that humanity doesn't fight wars. We fight for survival, and we bring everything we have." Jake looked at his screens, showing hundreds of human ships. Some were powerful warships. Others were converted civilian vessels with improvised weapons. All of them were crewed by humans who had abandoned their normal lives to answer a stranger's call for help. In the distance, space began to ripple as the Dominion fleet prepared to arrive. 400 ships full of professional killers were coming to destroy an innocent world, but they would find humans waiting for them. And humans, Jake was beginning to realize, were something the galaxy had never seen before. The space around Vela Prime was filled with human ships. 800 vessels of every size and type floated in defensive positions around the crystal blue planet. Admiral Kate Sullivan stood on the bridge of her flagship, looking at screens that showed the largest gathering of human ships in their history. Kate was 55 years old, with silver hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. She had fought in 4 wars and had never commanded anything like this strange fleet. Half her ships were military vessels with trained crews and proper weapons. The other half were civilians who had never fired a shot in anger but were willing to die for people they had never met. "Admiral Long-Range Sensors are picking up massive energy signatures," her tactical officer reported, Lieutenant Commander. John Hayes was a young man who usually managed to stay calm in any situation. Today, his voice shook slightly. "The Dominion fleet is about to arrive." Kate activated her communication system to speak to all human ships. "This is Admiral Sullivan to all vessels. In about 10 minutes, we're going to face the largest enemy fleet in recorded history. Most of you aren't soldiers. Some of you are flying ships that were never meant for fighting. But you're here because you believe that innocent people deserve to live." She paused, looking at the screens showing cargo ships next to destroyers, hospital ships beside cruisers, and mysterious black vessels that seemed to flicker in and out of existence. "The enemy thinks they know what humans are," Kate continued. "They think we're soft because we try to be peaceful. They think we're weak because we help others instead of taking what we want. Today we're going to teach them that they're wrong. We're not soft, we're not weak, we're just usually nice. When someone threatens innocent people, we stop being nice." Space itself seemed to tear open as the Dominion fleet arrived. 437 warships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation. The largest was a massive dreadnought called the Worldbreaker, big enough to destroy entire cities with a single shot. Round it flew hundreds of smaller ships, each one designed for one purpose: killing everything that got in their way. Admiral Crexton commanded the Dominion fleet from the bridge of the Worldbreaker. He was a creature with 4 eyes and skin like black metal. Crexton had conquered 17 worlds and had never met an enemy that could stand against his ships. He looked at his tactical displays and saw something that confused him. Analysis. He ordered his weapons officer, "Supreme Admiral, we count 800 human vessels. 57 appear to be military ships. The rest are civilian craft of various types. Many show signs of recent modifications, but most lack proper weapons or armor." Crexton's 4 eyes narrowed. In his experience, civilian populations ran away from battle, not toward it. The presence of so many non-military ships suggested either incredible stupidity or something else entirely. "What of their defensive positions? Disorganized but comprehensive, sir?" They have overlapping fields of fire, but their formation lacks military precision. Most concerning are these contacts here. The weapons officer highlighted several ships that seemed to appear and disappear on their screens. Stealth vessels of unknown design. Cannot get solid sensor locks on them. Crexton had destroyed 12 civilizations. He understood fear, desperation, and the inevitable collapse of weaker species when faced with superior force. What they didn't understand was why hundreds of civilian ships had voluntarily flown into a battle they couldn't win. On Vela Prime, millions of crystalline aliens watched their sky fill with ships. Zethkol, their leader, stood in their planetary communication center, trying to understand what was happening above his world. The humans have brought their entire civilization to protect us, he said to his advisors. Merchant ships, research, vessels, medical craft, and what appeared to be their military forces. Why would they risk so much for strangers? One of his advisors, an ancient Velen named Merelden, spoke with a voice like wind chimes. Perhaps they see something in us worth saving, or perhaps, Zethkol replied softly, they see something in themselves worth proving. Back in space, the two fleets faced each other across millions of kilometers of empty darkness. The Dominion ships moved in perfect formations, their weapons already charging for the first strike. The human ships seemed chaotic by comparison, with cargo haulers mixed in with destroyers and hospital ships positioned dangerously close to the battle line. Commander Alex Stone's unmarked stealth ship drifted invisible between the two fleets. His crew of 47 criminals and outcasts waited silently at their stations. These were humans that civilized society had thrown away, but they were still humans. When innocent people needed protecting, even monsters could choose to be heroes. Remember? We don't exist, Alex told his crew over their internal communication system. When this starts, we hit them from inside their formation. No rules, no mercy, no survivors. His weapons officer, a woman named Rachel who had been sentenced to death for terrorism before being recruited, smiled coldly. Sir, what about their civilian vessels, if they try to surrender? The Dominion doesn't take prisoners, Alex replied. They kill everyone. Children, doctors, teachers, artists. Today we kill them first. Dr. Amy Mitchell positioned her hospital ship, Mercy's Light, behind the main battle line. Her medical staff of 30 doctors and nurses prepared for casualties from both sides. Amy had taken an oath to save lives, and that oath didn't distinguish between human and alien patients. Doctor, shouldn't we move further back? Asked her chief nurse, a young woman named Carol who had never been in a combat zone. Amy looked at the tactical displays showing enemy ships that could destroy planets. Carol, in about 5 minutes, a lot of people are going to get hurt. Our job is to save as many as we can, no matter what side they're on or what species they belong to. Captain Nick Torres and his crew of former Marines had turned their cargo ship into an improvised warship. Their mining lasers had been modified to work as beam weapons. Construction charges were now torpedoes. Their cargo loading equipment had become missile launchers. Captain, we're getting targeting data from the military ships, his weapons officer reported. They want us to focus on the smaller enemy vessels. Nick smiled grimly. He and his crew knew they probably wouldn't survive the next hour, but they were going to make sure their deaths mattered. Boys, let's show these aliens what happens when you threaten innocent people in front of humans. Admiral Crexton decided he had seen enough. His fleet outnumbered the human military ships 8-1. The civilian vessels were barely worth his attention. This would be a quick battle, followed by the complete destruction of Vila Prime. All ships, open fire, he commanded. Eliminate the largest human vessels first. The smaller craft will scatter once they see their protectors burn. The Worldbreaker and her escort battleships unleashed a devastating attack. Plasma beams and kinetic projectiles crossed space at incredible speed, carrying enough energy to destroy mountains. The weapons struck the human battle line with the force of atomic bombs. When the energy discharges faded and the tactical displays cleared, Crexton expected to see debris and fleeing survivors. Instead, he saw something that challenged everything. He understood about warfare. The human ships were still there. Several had taken severe damage, hull breaches, destroyed weapon systems, fires burning in their corridors. But they hadn't broken formation, and they hadn't retreated. More disturbing still, the smaller civilian vessels had moved to shield the damaged military ships. Using their own hulls as improvised armor, Admiral Sullivan's voice carried across all human communication channels. All vessels, return fire. I'll show them what we learned in the dark between the stars. What happened next was unlike anything Crexton had ever experienced. The human response wasn't the disciplined volley of a conventional fleet. It was chaos given purpose and direction. Military ships fired their main batteries while cargo vessels launched improvised missiles. Mining ships used industrial lasers to cut through enemy armor. Even luxury yachts fired whatever weapons they could cobble together from spare parts. But the real nightmare began when the invisible ships revealed themselves. Alex Stone's stealth vessels had been positioned throughout the Dominion fleet, waiting for the perfect moment. When they struck, they did so without warning and without mercy. Ghost ships materialized inside enemy formations, launching boarding pods filled with humans who fought like cornered animals. Others deployed weapons that shouldn't have existed, computer viruses that turned Dominion ships against their own crews, machines that ate enemy armor from the inside, and devices that drove alien soldiers insane with fear. These were the monsters that human civilization usually kept hidden, war criminals given new purpose. Researchers who had developed weapons too terrible for normal use, soldiers who had been declared too dangerous for regular military service. They fought without honor, without rules, without the slightest concern for the conventions of civilized warfare. Captain Lisa Grant watched her destroyer squadron coordinate with a converted mining vessel to attack a Dominion heavy cruiser. The mining ship used its industrial cutting lasers to strip away armor while her destroyers targeted the exposed systems beneath. It was improvised, crude, and absolutely effective. The battle for Vila Prime had been raging for 2 hours, and Admiral Crexton was beginning to understand that he had made a terrible mistake. His fleet of 400 ships should have easily destroyed the human forces in the first attack. Instead, he was watching his vessels get picked apart by an enemy that refused to follow any known rules of warfare. A Dominion battleship exploded to his left as 3 human cargo ships rammed into it from different directions. The cargo vessels were destroyed in the collision. Their crews had already escaped in small pods that were quickly picked up by other human ships. The humans seemed to treat their ships as tools to be used and thrown away, while treating their people as irreplaceable treasures. Status report, Crexton demanded from his tactical officer. Supreme Admiral, we have lost 93 ships. Humans have lost over 200, but their remaining vessels continue to fight with increased intensity. Our formations are being disrupted by their unconventional tactics. Crexton studied his tactical display with growing alarm. Human ships that should have been destroyed hours ago continued to fight even when they were badly damaged. Crews that should have surrendered instead turned their dying vessels into weapons, ramming them into Dominion ships or detonating their engines too. Damaged nearby enemies. The worst part was the way the human fleet worked together. When a military ship was damaged, civilian vessels immediately moved to protect it. When ammunition ran low, cargo ships shared whatever weapons they had improvised. When ships were destroyed, other human vessels risked everything to rescue the survivors and put them back into the fight aboard different ships. Captain Ryan Webb commanded his heavy cruiser Thunderstrike in a battle group with 2 destroyers and a converted mining ship. The mining vessel, called Rock Crusher, was captained by a former Marine named Bill Santos. Bill's ship wasn't built for fighting, but his crew had mounted industrial cutting lasers on it that could slice through enemy armor like paper. Ryan, I'm getting close to that Dominion cruiser, Bill called over the communication channel. Can your boys keep the smaller ships off my back? Copy that, Bill. We've got you covered. Ryan watched as the Rock Crusher moved in close to a Dominion vessel, its mining lasers carving deep grooves in the enemy's hull. The Dominion ship tried to turn its weapons on the mining vessel, but Ryan's destroyers hit it with everything they had, keeping its attention focused on them instead. This was happening all across the battlefield. Human ships that had no business working together were coordinating like they had trained together for years. Military officers were taking tactical advice from civilian captains, who understood their improvised weapons better than anyone. Cargo ship crews were using their knowledge of space navigation to set up ambushes and escape routes. Commander
Alex.
Stone's ghost ships had turned the battle into a nightmare for the Dominion. His stealth vessels appeared and disappeared throughout the enemy fleet, striking without warning and vanishing before return fire could find them. His crews fought with a savagery that honored no law except victory. Stone's ship materialized next to a Dominion destroyer, and his boarding teams launched themselves across the gap between vessels. These weren't normal soldiers. They were murderers, terrorists, and war criminals who had been given a chance to use their darkness for something good. They moved through enemy ships like a plague, disabling systems and eliminating crews with ruthless efficiency. Target their command ship, Stone ordered his weapons officer. A man named Gary who had been sentenced to life in prison for blowing up a civilian transport. I want that thing crippled, not destroyed. We're going aboard. Gary smiled as he targeted the enemy vessel's engines and weapon systems. Sir, what about prisoners? The Dominion doesn't take prisoners, Stone replied, so neither do we. Dr. Amy Mitchell's hospital ship Mercy's Light had moved closer to the battle than any medical vessel should have been. Her staff was treating wounded from both human and Dominion ships, working in operating rooms that shook with each nearby explosion. Amy had lost count of how many lives they had saved, but she kept working. Doctor, we're getting reports of heavy casualties on the destroyer Lightning, her chief. Nurse Carol reported. Their medical bay was destroyed. They need immediate help. Amy looked at her tactical display. The Lightning was surrounded by enemy ships and taking heavy fire. Moving closer would put her entire medical staff at risk. Set course for the Lightning. She ordered full speed. But doctor, the enemy ships will target us. Amy looked at her nurse with steady eyes. Carol, those are our people over there. We don't abandon our own, no matter what the risk. The Mercy's Light charged toward the damaged destroyer, her massive bulk absorbing enemy fire that would have destroyed smaller vessels. Amy's medical teams prepared to receive casualties, while her captain used the ship's size as a shield for the wounded destroyer. Captain Nick Torres and his crew aboard the Freedoms. Call had been fighting for 3 hours straight. They're improvised. Weapons were running low on ammunition, and their ship was badly damaged from multiple enemy hits. But they kept fighting because that's what humans did. Captain, I'm reading massive explosions in the enemy formation, his sensor operator reported. Something big just went up. Nick looked at his screens and saw a sight that made him smile. A luxury yacht called the Star Dream had somehow gotten close to a Dominion battleship and detonated its entire fuel supply. The explosion took out the battleship and 2 smaller escort vessels. The yacht's crew had escaped in the last seconds, and they were already being picked up by a passing cargo hauler. That's the 3rd suicide run this hour, Nick's weapons officer said with admiration. These civilian captains are crazier than we are. Nick laughed, despite the danger around them. No, they're not crazy. They're human. There's a difference. Battle reached its climax when Admiral Crexton realized his fleet was not just losing but being systematically destroyed. The humans had surrounded his forces with a combination of military precision and civilian desperation that created an inescapable trap. Every time his ships tried to retreat, they found human vessels blocking their escape routes. Every time they tried to regroup, stealth ships appeared among them to cause chaos. The final blow came to the Worldbreaker itself. Dr. Mitchell's hospital ship Mercy's Light, working in coordination with one of Stone's ghost vessels, approached the massive dreadnought from 2 directions. The hospital ship used its powerful medical scanners to map the battleship's internal structure, while the stealth ship deployed boarding teams that moved through the vessel like a virus Amy had never imagined. Her medical equipment would be used as a weapon, but war made people do things they never thought possible. Her scanners showed Stone's teams exactly where to strike to cause maximum damage with minimum effort. Doctor, are you sure about this? Carol asked as they watched the boarding teams disable the Worldbreaker's defenses. Amy looked at the planet. Below them, filled with innocent people who just wanted to live in peace. Carol, sometimes saving lives means taking them. I don't like it, but I understand it. The Worldbreaker's main reactor exploded in a blast that lit up space for millions of kilometers. The explosion destroyed the Dominion flagship and dozens of nearby enemy vessels. With their command ship gone and their fleet scattered, the remaining Dominion forces began to surrender or flee. Admiral Sullivan opened a communication channel to all human ships. Attention all vessels. The enemy fleet has been destroyed. Vela Prime is safe. You have all done something extraordinary today. You have shown the galaxy what humanity really is. The battle was over, but its consequences were just beginning. 800 human ships had faced 400 Dominion vessels and won. More importantly, they had sent a message that would echo across the galaxy when innocent people called for help. Humans would answer. They would bring everything they had to offer that help, as the surviving human ships began rescue operations and medical treatment for wounded from both sides. None of them realized they had just changed the course of galactic history. The monsters of Earth had awakened, and the galaxy would never be the same. 3 months after the Battle of Vela Prime, the galaxy was still trying to understand what had happened. On a dozen different worlds, military leaders and government officials studied the battle recordings, trying to figure out how 800, mostly civilian human ships had destroyed the most feared fleet in known space, the Galactic. Council met on the neutral world of Haven Station. Representatives from 43 different species gathered in a great circular chamber to hear testimony about the battle. At the center of the room stood Zeth Cole, the crystal-bodied leader of the Velans, preparing to tell his story. Honored members of the council, Zeth Cole began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's translation systems. When our world faced complete destruction, we sent out a desperate message asking for help. We hoped that perhaps a few ships might offer to take our children to safety. We never expected an entire species to mobilize for war. The chamber was silent as Zeth Cole continued. But what happened next was even more remarkable than their victory. After the battle, the humans did not claim our world as their territory. They did not demand payment or tribute. They helped us repair our damaged cities, and then most of them simply left. Returning to their normal lives as if nothing extraordinary had happened, a tall, insect-like delegate from the Thraxian Empire stood up. The Thraxians were known throughout the galaxy as skilled warriors who had conquered dozens of worlds through military might. Their representative spoke with a voice that clicked and buzzed through his translator. Council members, my people have studied this battle extensively. By every rule of warfare we understand, the humans should have been completely destroyed. Their fleet was outnumbered. Most of their ships were not designed for combat. Their tactics violated every principle of military science. Then how do you explain their victory? Asked the ethereal delegate, her ghostly form shimmering inside. Its containment suit. The Thraxian's compound eyes reflected the chamber lights as he answered. They did not fight as individual ships or even as a coordinated military force. They fought as a single living thing. Every vessel, from the largest battleship to the smallest cargo hauler, acted as both an independent unit and as part of a greater whole. When one ship was damaged, others immediately moved to protect it. When weapons ran out, civilian craft shared whatever they had improvised. When ships were destroyed, their crews were rescued and continued fighting from other vessels. Admiral Kate Sullivan sat in the witness section, wearing her dress uniform with its new decorations. She had been promoted and honored for her leadership during the battle, but she knew the real heroes were the civilians who had abandoned their safe lives to answer a stranger's call for help. The council's senior member, an ancient being called the moderator, spoke in a voice that sounded like distant thunder. Admiral Sullivan, the council would like to understand the human response. Your species mobilized hundreds of ships and risked thousands of lives for people you had never met. This behavior is unprecedented in our recorded history. Kate stood slowly, feeling the weight of speaking for her entire species. Honored moderator, I think you misunderstand what happened at Vela Prime. We didn't mobilize our military to fight a war. Our people heard that innocent beings were about to be murdered, and they couldn't stand by and let it happen. It wasn't strategy or politics. It was just who we are. But surely you understood the risks. Pressed the delegate from the Centauran Republic. The Dominion fleet could have destroyed your entire force. What made you believe you could succeed against such overwhelming odds? Kate thought about Captain Nick Torres, who had turned his cargo ship into a weapon. She remembered Dr. Amy Mitchell, who had charged her hospital ship into battle to save wounded enemies. She thought about Commander Alex Stone and his ghost. Ships filled with criminals who had chosen to be heroes. We didn't know we could succeed, Kate admitted. Most of us expected to die. Humans have learned something over thousands of years of history. Sometimes you have to fight monsters even if you might lose. Because if you don't fight them, you become them. Across the galaxy, word of the human victory was spreading through 1,000 different channels. On worlds where people lived under the threat of stronger enemies, they whispered stories about the species that had answered when strangers called for help. On planets where tyrants ruled through fear, underground movements began to wonder if their own cries for help might be heard. The Dominion of Krex was collapsing. News of their fleet's destruction had reached every world in their empire, inspiring slave revolts and independence movements that their remaining forces couldn't control. The invincible reputation that had been their greatest weapon was broken, beyond repair, but some beings in the galaxy were troubled by what they had learned about humanity. The peaceful ethereals sent a diplomatic message to Earth, expressing concern about the disturbing potential for violence that humans had displayed. Other species worried about what might happen if humanity ever decided to use their military abilities for conquest instead of protection. Commander Jake Morrison, now promoted to Admiral, was back aboard the Horizon's Edge, continuing his mission of exploration and first contact. His ship had been repaired and upgraded, but it still carried the battle scars from Vela Prime. Jake often stood in his command center, looking at the stars and thinking about what his species had become. His communication officer, Casey Brooks, approached him with a message pad. "Admiral, we're receiving a distress signal from the Kepler system. The colony ship has been attacked by raiders. They're requesting immediate assistance." Jake read the message and smiled. Around human space, he knew that other captains were receiving similar calls. Ships that had fought at Vela Prime were already changing course toward Kepler. Civilian vessels were modifying their equipment for combat. Medical ships were preparing for casualties. "Set course for Kepler," Jake ordered. "Maximum speed." Casey looked at him with curiosity. "Sir, shouldn't we contact military command first? Get official authorization?" Jake thought about the 800 ships that had gathered at Vela Prime without orders, without official sanction, simply because they had heard that innocent people needed help. "Casey, when people are in trouble, humans don't wait for permission to help. We just help." Dr. Amy Mitchell was back to her research aboard the Mercy's Light when she received an invitation from the Velan medical community. A permanent exchange program, sharing knowledge and techniques that could save lives across the galaxy. Similar invitations were reaching human scientists, engineers, and diplomats from dozens of species that had heard about Vela Prime. Commander Alex Stone had returned to the shadows, his unmarked ship officially non-existent once again. But he and his crew of monsters waited in the darkness between stars, listening for the next cry for help. The galaxy now knew that humanity had creatures of terrible violence in their ranks. But they also knew that those creatures could be pointed at the right targets. The Battle of Vela Prime had created a new reality in the galaxy. Species that had never considered humanity a major power were reassessing their positions. Potential aggressors found themselves wondering what might happen if they attracted human attention. Oppressed populations whispered about the possibility of their own desperate messages being answered. On Vela Prime itself, the Crystal People were rebuilding their cities and creating new works of art inspired by their salvation. Had expected to die were growing up in a world made safe by strangers who had cared enough to fight for them. In their great libraries, they recorded the story of how monsters from Earth had become their saviors. Zeth Cole concluded his testimony to the Galactic Council with words that would be repeated on 1,000 worlds. "We learned something at Vela Prime that changed our understanding of the universe. When innocent people cry out in the darkness, there are beings who will answer. They call themselves human, but they are something more. They are the proof that in a galaxy full of predators and prey, there can still be protectors." The council session ended, The delegates returned to their worlds carrying news that would reshape galactic politics for generations. Humanity had shown the galaxy something unprecedented, an entire species willing to risk everything for strangers, bringing their saints and their sinners, their heroes and their monsters, united by the simple belief that innocent people deserve to live. In the cold space between stars, 800 human ships had danced with death and emerged victorious. More importantly, they had sent a message that would echo through time. When the innocent call for help, the monsters of Earth will answer.